Imagine it's the end of the 15th century and you live in the heart of the Aztec Empire, at the height of its power and magnificence. You stand at the base of a massive terraced pyramid with tens of thousands of other people, all excited about what's going on. The humid air is broken by the cool winds emanating from the water surrounding the city, as the temple's looming shadow falls over the city and the crowd below. Everyone stares up at the platform at the foot of the twin shrines at the top of the pyramid. Here, where the sun pours between two upper constructions like a gilded river, a handful of blood-soaked priests wearing turquoise and jade jewelry, ritual capes and plumed headdresses wield flint or obsidian blades. They cut the hearts of selected human sacrifices, prisoners of war, and present the organ to the sun, calling out to the gods to witness their offerings of blood. You cheer with delight when the priest tosses the heart onto the ever-burning brazier, as this temple born of stone acts as the beacon to the gods, whose thirst for blood allows the world to keep turning and the crops to grow is being appeased by these gifts of sacrifice. Oh, what a thought! This gruesome yet magnificent scene was a relatively common occurrence at the stone pyramid of Huey Teocalli, or God House, in the capital city of Tenochtitlan of the Aztec Empire. This temple, also called the Templo Mayor by the Spanish conquistadors, was a vital part of the Aztec community in their rituals, celebrations, and cultural identities. Although it no longer stands in what is now Mexico City, and a lot of its history has been lost, much of what is known about Huey Teocalli continues to capture the imagination, particularly with regard towards the many human sacrifices that were held there. As a result, we have many questions about its part in the Aztec way of life. What was the temple? What importance did this pyramid hold? What went on there? Why were people sacrificed there? What happened to it? Today, we'll be covering the fascinating history and legacy of Huey Teocalli, the main temple at the center of the Aztec capital, Tenochtitlan. A Teocalli, the Nahuatl word for God House, was a Mesoamerican tiered pyramid which became a vital part of Aztec architecture and religious culture, and was heavily featured in rituals and sacred celebrations throughout pre-colonized Mexico. It is one of the most distinguishable architectural structures in the world, particularly with its staggering accuracy that the stones were cut, placed, and erected. The most famous Teocalli in the empire was Huey Teocalli, found in the capital of the Aztec Empire, Tenochtitlan, in what is now the metropolis of Mexico City. The Aztecs, also known as the Mexica or the Tenoch, were said to have departed from their homeland of Aztlan in perhaps what is today the southwestern United States or northwestern Mexico, traveling south deeper through Mesoamerica until these pilgrims came across an island in the middle of Lake Texcoco. It was here where they saw an eagle with a snake in its beak sitting on a prickly pear cactus, which was seen as a sign from their god of war and the sun, Huitzilopochtli. Huitzilopochtli was one of the premier gods of the Aztec faith, and the Aztecs declared this island to be where they would build their city because of this sign. Constructed in the center of the city, Huey Teocalli was built along an east-west axis, and over the course of the next 100 years, was surrounded by the Cotonamatl, a massive wall with intricate engravings of serpents on it. The temple had a pair of long staircases that faced east, where the professional way came to its elegant end. This long street was surrounded by 78 other structures, including a skull rack called Zompantli, the Teotactli or ball court, and the priest house also known as Calmecac. Other religious structures such as the temple of the flayed god Xipe Totec were also located within the walled sacred precinct and were complemented by courtyards. Tenochtitlan's Templo Mayor overlooked the central district of the city and was massive compared to the other buildings of the city. At the time of the Spanish arrival in Mesoamerica, the base of the tiered pyramid was around 100 meters by 80 meters and stood about 365 meters tall, appearing like a mountain. Two sets of enormous stairs led up to the flat platform, where a set of 60-meter-tall twin temples, dedicated to two of the most important gods of the Aztec faith, the gods Tlaloc, the patron of farmers and god of rain, and Huitzilopochtli, the god of war and the sun. Tlaloc's sanctuary, located to the north or the right, was painted with white and blue bands and commemorated the wet season and summer solstice. Huitzilopochtli's temple was to the south or left at the top of the platform and was painted with red stripes, honoring the winter solstice and dry season. These shrines embodied the popularized concept of duality, which was found throughout Aztec myths, architecture, art, and culture, and was essential as part of the Aztecs' religious practices. The temples lay at the top of the stone platform, containing wooden statues of the gods in their respective shrines. In the center of the platform lay a sacrificial stone, where many sacrifices were held because blood was seen as fuel for how the world worked. Sacrifice was an essential feature of the religious ritual, used as a spiritual bridge between the gods and humans. Blood was sacred water, the very fluid that turned the wheels of life itself. And to keep the gods happy, spilling blood was necessary as fuel for the divine labors to allow the crops to grow, the rain to come, and the sun to shine. Offerings were given freely, including food, coral, shells, gold, and flowers, which were given at home shrines or at the public or private temples. Self-sacrifice or bloodletting was given by individuals of all ranks privately in their own home, often through giving a couple of drops given as thanks. Yet the most essential sacrifice was carried out by priests at Huey Teocalli. The holy men would lay a chosen victim, most frequently prisoners of war, out on the sacrificial stone on the platform between the shrines and used obsidian or flint knives to cut the victim's heart out and then behead the sacrifice to the cheering of the crowd. Lovely image, right? Yeah, not the way I'd want to go out. I at least want to keep my head, or my heart. You know what? Never mind. I don't want any of it. Anywho, these sacrifices were carried out during ceremonies and important state occasions, including funerals, coronations, the new fire ceremony, which was held every 52 years to celebrate the completion of the solar cycle, and Huitzilopochtli's birthday celebrations. One of the most notorious celebrations recorded in Aztec history took place in 1487 AD, when war captives were brutally butchered over the course of 4 days. Who doesn't love a little blood at their birthday party? It isn't one without it, I guess. The initial infrastructure of Tenochtitlan was constructed of wood and mud in 1325 AD, building the foundation for what would later become a sprawling city. The first version of Huey Teocalli stood on the island where the Aztecs had seen the eagle and snake, although no archaeological evidence of the earlier structure has ever been recovered and may not have survived the initial years of the city's existence. As the population grew, the Aztecs built man-made islands called chinampas, which were perched over the waterline and later connected to each other through ducts and channels. These canals also acted as aqueducts that together connected to other lakes and kept the freshwater separate from saltwater. As the years passed, the Aztecs expanded their kingdom and the city was rebuilt multiple times. The first iteration of the temple was built over and between 1375 and 1427 during the reigns of kings Acamapichtli, Huitzilihuitla, and Quimalpopoca, where a stone foundation was established. The Aztecs expanded the footprint of the Huey Teocalli, and 2 stone shrines were erected at the top of the pyramid. Some of the most important advancements to the temple were carried out during the reign of its Quatl between 1427 and 1440 AD, who founded the Aztec Empire by notably liberating the Aztecs from under the control of the city-state of Azcapotzalco and forming the Triple Alliance between the Aztecs and the states of Texcoco and Tlacopan. It was at this juncture that Huey Teocalli became a focal point of Tenochtitlan, and in the coming years, continued advancements and developments were carried out. Between 1440 and 1480, under the reigns of Moctezuma I and Axayacatl, we see the building of the most stunning monuments and ornaments that were excavated in the 20th and 21st centuries. The great platform at the top of the great steps of the tiered pyramid lay between the shrines of Tlaloc and Huitzilopochtli, and were embellished with serpents, monkeys, depictions of Tlaloc, and large braziers. The stairway to the Temple of Tlaloc was indicated by a pair of long snakes. The altar of Tlaloc and the column of Coilzauqui were constructed during this period as well. Stucco was added to the platform and the ceremonial plaza was paved during the reign of Tizoc between 1481 and 1486. During the reign of Ahuitzol, the updates under Tizoc were completed and carvings were added, opening the temple, and the massive wall with serpents on them were erected around the sacred precinct and constructed the House of the Eagle Warriors. The final version of the temple took place during the last years of the empire, under the reign of King Moctezuma II Xocoyotzin, also referred to as just Montezuma. Montezuma would be the last king of the Aztecs. After ascending to the throne in 1502, Montezuma continued to expand the temple, although very little has ever been archaeologically recovered. This would be the most well-documented depiction of Huey Teocalli, as it was the very last. Arriving in Mesoamerica in 1519, The Spaniards descended on Tenochtitlan and were stunned by the sprawling 13-kilometer city. Montezuma welcomed the Spanish warmly and offered them many gifts as an offer of friendship. The leader of the conquistadors, Hernan Cortes, sought to capture the city, so he took the Aztec king prisoner on November 14, 1519 AD. The Spanish destroyed many of the artifacts found in the sacred precinct and placed a massive cross on the platform of Huey Teocalli, a severe insult to the Aztecs. The Aztecs were infuriated and sought to repel the Spaniards, but the Aztec plot to attack the conquistadors was uncovered. The Europeans led a preemptive assault during the religious festival of the Feast of Toxcatl in the sacred precinct in late May of 1520. Between 8,000 and 10,000 unarmed Aztec nobles were slain and thousands more injured. The Aztecs were appalled and word quickly spread of the bloodbath. The Aztecs brutally turned the tables on the Spanish, killing 7 and taking 68 as captives. Dragging the prisoners to the top of the temple, 10 were immediately put to death, their heads cut off and tossed down the steps in front of the terrified Spanish. The remaining captives were sacrificed later that night, flayed alive with such precision that their faces still had their beards attached. Gross, but effective, I guess. The horrified Spanish, who witnessed the executions from their camps on the outside of the city, vowed revenge, but were greatly outnumbered. The remaining Spanish pulled back and fled to the jungles to escape the wrathful Aztecs, who celebrated their victory over the Spanish. The Aztecs selected Montezuma's brother, Cuitlahuac, to lead the Montezuma steed, due to the captured Montezuma trying to pacify his people. According to some accounts, Montezuma was killed by his own people, who saw him as a traitor for cooperating with the Spanish invaders by being stoned to death. Other sources suggest that he was murdered by the Spanish conquistadors, who held him captive. Regardless, the Aztecs stood very little chance under Cuitlahuac, as the Spanish returned with nearly 200,000 native allies acquired through a mutual hatred for the Aztecs. These natives that allied with the Spaniards are a very little talked about aspect of this war when it comes to the mainstream history behind the downfall of the Aztecs. The two most prominent native allies consisted of the Tlaxcala and the Kempoala, both of whom wanted to see the Aztecs wiped out. With his newfound allies, Cortes laid siege to Tenochtitlan, destroying the aqueduct and cutting off food supplies to the Aztecs, while smallpox, a disease never before seen before in Mesoamerica, spread through the capital and wreaked havoc on the hundreds of thousands of residents in the city. The Aztec city was eventually destroyed by August 1521, leading to several devastating massacres led by the Spanish against the Aztecs. Tens of thousands were killed in the violence, and even more were slain by disease and famine. The Great Temple was dismantled over the course of the remainder of the 16th and 17th centuries and built over to resemble a European city. Now, where the magnificent Huey Teocalli stood is the picturesque main square of Mexico City, the picturesque Zocalo of a modern metropolis speckled with the stunning 17th century architecture of the Metropolitan Cathedral of the Assumption of the Most Blessed Virgin Mary into heaven. This enormous church breaks up the modern city skyline and offers a glimpse into the colonial roots of the crown jewel of Spanish imperialism at the end of the Age of Exploration. Although the temple no longer stands in the city center of Mexico City, Huey Teocalli remains an important piece of Aztec history and Mexican cultural identity. For a long time, it was believed that the 17th century cathedral was erected over the remains of the temple. But by the end of the 19th century, it proved most of the temple was underneath the modern market square of the Zocalo. Further excavations revealed the first few artifacts, including ceramics and stones from the sacred precinct. By the mid-20th century, parts of a beam, staircase, offerings, and stone serpent heads of Templo Mayor were recovered. These were invaluable, showing the expansive state of the Mesoamerican Empire before being dismantled by the Spanish. Further insight into the Aztecs as a whole was unearthed in 1978, when electric company employees discovered a huge stone disc weighing 8.5 metric tons and measuring 3.25 meters in diameter and 30 centimeters thick, dating all the way back to the 15th century. It was identified as being related to the moon goddess Coyolxauhqui, which would inspire further excavations of the area. Thousands of artifacts were uncovered over the next decade, including effigies, ceremonial masks, feathers, bones of animals, clay pots, skulls, gold, and knives. Continued excavation of the region has provided a wealth of knowledge and artifacts about the Aztecs, and in 1987 Templo Mayor was added to the UNESCO World Heritage for its important preservation of Mesoamerican history. In the same year, a museum was built as part of Templo Mayor project in unison with the Urban Archaeology program. It remains the most valuable home to the preservation of Huey Teocalli, the Aztec Empire, and the history of Tenochtitlan. Thank you for watching Amateur Archaeology. We hope you enjoyed this video about Huey Teocalli. If so, please leave a like and don't forget to subscribe and leave us a comment below. Hit that bell button too so you can get updates on our latest videos and news of our latest giveaways on authentic ancient coins. Also, feel free to suggest what other topics of history you would like us to cover. Until next time, this has been Amateur Archaeology.